So we have an exciting session today for all of you. How many of you want to go for higher education to the US or somewhere else? All of you, almost. That's amazing. And do you have any idea about the scholarships, the exchange programs, or how would you build your resume as a part of the process? Any idea? Or you have to still figure out, right? Okay. So then this session is absolutely wonderful. I am sure it is going to be very informative, inspiring, and I think it will lead you in the right direction. So the session is by David Moyer. He's the Public Affairs Officer from the US Consulate of Hyderabad. So he will be briefing you about the educational opportunities and the programs that US Consulate has been doing. And we, as your professors, can totally endorse, because we've been part of those exchange programs. And Dr. Tushar from School of Humanities, and me myself, Dr. Lalita Sanduri, we've been Fulbrighters in the past. There is a fellowship called Fulbright Fellowship. Anybody have any idea? Okay, great. So let us welcome our guest today, David Moyer. David Moyer is the Public Affairs Officer at the US Consulate in Hyderabad. He joined the US State Department in 2003, and his overseas assignments include Mexico, Vietnam, South Korea, and Cyprus. In Washington, D.C., he served as Deputy Director in the UN Political Affairs Office. David recently concluded a Pearson Fellowship as a Foreign Policy Advisor for Indiana Senator Todd Young. He has bachelor's degrees in Japanese and International Relations from Brigham Young University and an MBA from the George Washington University. His wife, Audrey, is also a Foreign Service Officer, and they have 3 sons. Please give a big round of applause for our guest, David Moyer. Please welcome, sir. Also have accompanying David, Dr. Senthil Kumar, who is the Public Engagement Specialist, if I'm not wrong, from the US Consulate. Please come onto the stage. Please welcome him. Karunakar sir, from Director, PS, School of Business School. Please welcome sir onto the stage. Please welcome sir. We will brief you about all the opportunities that are in front of you. If you have any questions at the end of the session, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Get started? All right. Awesome. Okay. All right. Hear me okay? Or is you on fire? How's that? Sound good? All right. I want to keep this kind of informal today because you're all freshmen, you're all brand new to college, and you don't want to be bored by a speaker up at the podium just talking about lecturing. You're going to get lots of lectures. So I want to keep this informal, and I want to spend most of the time answering your questions, okay? So I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes or so. If you're still awake after 15 minutes, you can ask some questions, okay? So start thinking now. I brought a few small gifts for some of the best questions. So start thinking about the questions. You can ask about anything. I'm here to talk about mostly education-related things, but you can ask about anything in the United States. You can ask about me. You can ask about sports, the best sport in the world. I'll tell you that answer if you want to know. You can ask about policy stuff. If you're interested in world events, I'm happy to give you my perspective, okay? If there's any journalists in the audience, are there any journalists? Okay, we'll keep this an off-the-record discussion. That way anything I say won't get into the newspaper. That way I can be very honest and upfront with you. Sound good? All right, so you're all freshmen, correct? You're excited, you got into college, your dreams are coming true. But when I look out on you, I see one thing today. Do you know what I see? Failure. Okay, not on your part. I failed. because part of my job as the public affairs officer in Hyderabad is to convince the top students from India to go study in the United States, okay? So if you're sitting here today, that means me and my team, we failed, okay? Not you, me, I failed. So what I'm here to do today is to try to convince you, since you didn't decide to go to the US for undergraduate studies, I want you to start thinking today so you can plan in the future and maybe go do your master's degree in the United States. That would be my goal. I hope, I saw a lot of hands go up when you were asked about your interest in studying in the US or other countries. And I'm here to convince you a little bit today about studying in the United States. So start thinking today about what you're going to do in 3 or 4 years from now when you graduate. I want you to think about the United States, okay? Sound good? All right. So I got your attention because I said the word failure. That's the worst thing to say in India, right? But first of all, really, congratulations on getting into Gitam University. I know it's very prestigious. It's a very good academic program. You have very committed faculty. And as I've met some of the faculty before, they've been selected to participate in the very prestigious Fulbright program. That's just one of many different programs that the US government offers to pay for study tours or even to get a master's degree in the United States. Okay, it's the most prestigious US scholarship program that we offer. But let me kind of back up a little bit and explain what the US Consulate is about and what work I specifically do. So around the world, governments establish an embassy, usually in the capital city of a country. So here in India, we have an embassy in New Delhi. When we have lots of other issues we're trying to cover, we can't do it all out of the embassy. We need what's called consulates. And those are kind of mini embassies, okay? How many US consulates are there in India? Anybody know? True. We'll get to that in a second. How many US consulates around the country in India? I'll give you a hint. 4. Okay. So we have one in Kolkata. That was actually the first overseas presence the US government established hundreds of years ago. So that's been there forever. We also have one in Mumbai, Chennai, and the newest one in India is Hyderabad. It was established in 2013? Oh, sorry, 2008, sorry. So 2008, relatively new consulate. And, you know, at the time, we thought we'd only be, we started looking for a space to build a new consulate. So they said, in the meantime, you can set up your offices in this beautiful palace called the Paiga Palace, located in Begumpet. Has anybody been to the consulate? Okay, a few people. So it's a beautiful old historic building, but it's too small. So many years ago, the US government said, we want to buy some land in Hyderabad and build a world-class consulate. So that construction's been happening for several years, and I'm very excited to report, a few months from now in November, the building will be complete, okay? It's a huge building, huge. It's on 12 acres of land, and it's a very modern building. It looks kind of like a museum maybe. But the US government doesn't always build nice buildings, but this building, this is exceptional. This is a beautiful building. It's huge. It has room for lots of growth. And what that tells me is the US government sees the potential for a much deeper, longer-term relationship with the people in Hyderabad and the states that we cover. So each consulate in India is responsible for a certain number of states. So Hyderabad consulate covers the states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Odisha. Okay, just those 3 states. So if you want to apply for a visa and you're from that area, you would probably come to Hyderabad. If it's easier to fly to Chennai, you can actually apply for visas there. But most people, when they think about consulates or embassy, you just think about visas, right? We do a lot of other things at the consulates. So me and my team, we'll have 3 Americans working there and about 12 local staff like Senthil. And we have a whole range of issues we cover. In the public affairs space, we do things like media engagement. We try to learn what the local media are saying about the US government or US policies. We also use the local media to talk about what we're doing. So you might see us publish an op-ed talking about a policy priority for us, and we're trying to explain it to the public on why this is important to the United States, and hopefully why it should be important to you as well. So we do media engagement. The area that we're here to talk about today is more about student engagement and exchange programs. So my job is to facilitate interactions between the United States and India, and specifically the 3 states I talked about. But we can't send all of you to the United States. We can't give everybody a scholarship. We can't even send all of you on a short exchange program. It's very expensive, very time consuming. We just don't have enough time and money. So we have different competitions, and if you look at our website, you can find out more about these opportunities. But in general, we're trying to give a wide range of people some exposure to the United States. Why do we do that? Why do we invest my tax dollars on the US government side to send people from India to the US? We really believe in the value of exchange, because if someone who's never been to the US travels there and they meet Americans, they travel around America, they see different cities and different people, they start to understand better what it's like to be American. And maybe you don't always agree with us, that's fine. But if you can understand Americans better, that will help inform you, okay? Someday, some of you are going to become politicians, members of legislative assembly, you're going to become presidents of companies, you're going to become leaders at a think tank, or maybe you're going to work at an NGO, okay? When you're in those roles, you have the potential of working with people in the United States, because let's be honest, these days, we're all operating in a global environment. It's no longer just about India, right? India manufactures goods, those goods get sold around the world. India also imports goods from different countries around the world. If we're not talking about goods, what if we're talking about information? Okay, I live in the area of Hyderabad called Gachibowli. As I look out my window, I see these offices for Deloitte, okay, a US company, right? Massive offices all over. Why does Deloitte have such big offices here in Hyderabad? Or why does Microsoft or Amazon or Apple, why do they have offices here? Anyone know? Human resources, right? Indians are very talented, very smart, very good, very focused on a lot of things, in particular on technology, right? How many of you are studying technology or something related to technology? Wow, that's crazy. That's a lot, okay? And obviously Indian students have a very good reputation as being very dedicated, working very hard, getting good marks, and eventually a lot of you are going to go work for maybe tech companies or start your own company, okay? US businesses rely very heavily on that back office in particular, that backbone of technology to be successful. So that's why those companies I named, the top 5 US tech companies in the world, have their largest operations outside of the United States in Hyderabad, okay? That says something about the environment here. Obviously, Minister KTR is doing a great job attracting interest, but it's also because there's so much talent here in this part of the country, in this part of the world. And that starts here with each of you as freshmen. You have big visions. You have to work really hard. And I want to say a couple of things that will be hopefully important to you. As you prepare for the future, right now you're just focused on the next few years to get your degree, right? But you really need to be thinking further down the road, 5 or 10 years. As I said, I really want you to consider opportunities to go study for your master's degree in the United States. I think most of you, because you're from this part of the country, there's already a very strong reputation and a long trend of students from this part of the country going to the US for master's degrees. So again, raise your hand if you have a brother, sister, cousin, aunt or uncle, or close friend who went to the U.S. for studies. Okay? So maybe almost half of you. That's crazy. I've lived in 5 different countries. Mexico is right next to the U.S. If I asked that question in Mexico, I'd maybe get 3 or 4 hands going up. Okay? So already, I don't need to do too much convincing, hopefully. There's a long history and a long rate of success of students like yourselves going to the U.S., getting a master's degree. And hopefully I don't need to explain too much about the value of U.S. education, but just briefly, if you look at the top 100 universities in the world, I don't know the exact percentage, but I would say probably at least half are in the United States. Okay? And even if you don't want to consider the top schools, because let's be honest, even if it's a top school, that doesn't mean it's the best fit for you. Okay, each of you is different. Each of you has different talents, different abilities. Maybe you don't want to be in a massive school of 30,000 students. Maybe you'd prefer to be in a more specialized school that only has 1,000 students. So you have more interaction with your professor, more opportunities for research, because U.S. universities spend more on research and development than any other universities in the world. Okay, so for those in the tech field, where is the newest app going to come from? Where is the next unicorn company going to emerge from? We like to think that we have a good ecosystem in the U.S. to take talented students like yourselves, connect them with research and development opportunities, and we create amazing things together. Okay? But also, I know a big attraction of going to the U.S., it's not just the degree. The degree is important, but it's what happens after the degree. So some of you may know, as part of your student visa, you have the option of staying in the United States to work after you finish your degree for up to 3 years. Okay, if you're in the STEM field, it goes up to 3 years. That's a long time. And how do you think you would look if you come back to India, you have a master's degree from the United States, and let's say you have 3 years work experience for Microsoft or Apple in the United States? That's invaluable experience. Okay, you bring that talent and that knowledge back here, you're going to have a lot of great opportunities open to you. And I think it's not just about the work experience. I hope that living in the United States and being a student there and working there, it's opening your mind up to different things. Just like the reason I love my job is because I get to go live in different countries. I get to learn about different cultures, have different experiences. That's so interesting to me. It changes the way I think, it changes the way I approach problems, and hopefully that makes me just a smarter, better person. And I think by you traveling to the United States, spending some time there to work and study, you would also become a more marketable person, a more interesting person, hopefully, because you have different experiences. You look at problems differently. And in particular, as I look across the audience, it looks like we're maybe 50-50 male-female. It's really important for women to consider themselves equal and to look for opportunities to continue your studies. Too often we see talented women starting off at the undergraduate levels, and then for various reasons they don't keep going, they don't pursue their additional studies. And something that really stuck out in my mind is I met the chief scientist of NASA. We all know what NASA is, okay? It's the space agency in the United States. The chief scientist was a woman several years ago. And she came to Mexico, I was there, and she talked to the students, specifically to female students, and she said, we need women in the most technical fields in the world. And the answer of why we need that is very simple. Women and men think differently, okay? I've been married for 28 years. I can guarantee that statement is true. I think very differently than my wife. And if any of you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you can probably agree with me, right? Men and women think differently. That also means that when we're solving a problem, we approach it from different perspectives. We have different ideas of how to solve that problem. And if you're NASA, you're thinking about solving some of the biggest problems in the world, you need as many different perspectives as possible. So that's the reason that this scientist, Dr. Ellen Stofan, she said, we need women there, we need men there, we need as many different ideas as possible to solve problems. Okay? That doesn't just apply to NASA. That applies to all of you. No matter what career path you are on, you're going to need to work in teams, you're going to need to solve problems, and you're going to need to overcome challenges. And that is best done with diverse teams, not just male-female teams. You need people from cities, you need people from rural communities, you need people that come from families that are wealthy and families that don't have a lot of wealth. You need diversity. And right now in the US government, we are really focused on the importance of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Okay? The United States is a very diverse country, but too often, the people that rise into positions like myself look like me. They're Caucasian skin, they're male, because they've had better opportunities than other people that don't look like me. Okay? So right now, the US government's really putting an emphasis on helping more people, a more diverse group of people, to have the same opportunities that I've had. Okay? And I want you to think about that in your own context as you go forward, the power and the importance of diversity. It will make whatever organization you're working for stronger, more effective, and ultimately more profitable. If you go into the private sector and you need to make money, it'll work there. If you're creating an organization that's not for profit, you will still have better and different ideas. All right, so we've talked about student exchange a little bit. We talked about working in the United States. Just briefly again, we're building a new consulate. We're here for a long term. But a big part of what we want to do is work with student groups. So in order to give you the information you need to find the right school and make that tough decision about going to the United States, we have a great service that's available to all of you. Okay, even better, that service is free. Okay, that's the key word for students, right? Because money's tight, you're always looking for something that's free, right? A free meal, a free ride. So free education consulting. It's through a service called Education USA. We have consultants in Hyderabad. We have one at the US Consulate, and we have up to 7 at an office called the Y-Axis Foundation. Okay, you may have heard of Y-Axis. They do visa and travel consulting. They also have a not-for-profit arm of their business, and there they have 7 advisors that provide free support to people like you that are looking to maybe go study in the United States. The challenge is there's a number of factors, right? It's expensive depending on which university you choose. So maybe you're looking for scholarships and financial aid. They can help you answer those questions. The big question is, how do you know which school to choose? There are over 4,500 accredited universities in the United States. And as I said, not all of them are a good fit for all of you. Okay? So each of you maybe is a good fit for a different university. And our advisors are there to help you ask questions. Say, what are you looking for? What do you want to study? What do you want to do after your studies? Do you want connections with the business sector? Do you prefer to do research and development? They ask a series of questions and they help you refine your list. So in the end, you have maybe 4 or 5 universities that you should consider, and they help you figure out the application process. And then after that, you get to decide. Maybe you get some scholarship offers, and then you come get your visa, off you go. Okay? So if you're interested or you want to start thinking, I know it's early, you have several years to go, but think about Education USA. You can go online. You can probably even do some virtual consulting over the phone or the internet and start to get some of your questions answered. But the bottom line is we don't expect you just to figure that out by yourselves, because it's a big challenge. So many different options, so many different schools. We want to make sure it's the right fit for each of you. So as you progress in your studies and you think more about going to the U.S. down the road, come visit one of our centers, talk to our advisors, and get some free support. Zenthal, is there anything else I haven't covered? Oh, yes, thank you. The one thing I almost forgot. So, right now, the reason you got into this university is because you're good students and you work hard. Okay, you're very focused on exams and performing well in those exams. As you think about the future, when you're the CEO of a business, you're the leader of an organization, there are no exams at that point, right? It's not about how well you do on an exam, it's how well you function as a leader, as a colleague, as a manager of an organization. And in the United States, when you're applying for especially undergraduate programs, but even to a degree master's programs, they try to look at you as a whole candidate, not just on one or two tests. So what my advice for today is, as you think about the next few years, as you pursue your studies here, branch out and do different activities, okay? Zenthal mentioned volunteerism. A lot of you probably just don't have a lot of free time or haven't had free time up till now, but as you go through your college years, you'll have more time. Find opportunities to volunteer. Why? I think it's an important value just in general to focus on something that's other than yourself, helping people in a community, giving time. But more importantly, I think what you'll find is the more you think about other people and help people that have different situations than yourself, you will learn things about yourself. You will, I think, develop as a person, which makes you even more marketable. So in the end, as you spend more time helping others, I think you will become a better person yourself. And then that can be reflected also as you apply for jobs and universities in the United States. They're happy to see that you're not just focused on your own studies, you're focused on helping other people through volunteerism. They also like to see people that spend time doing different activities. So join clubs. I'm sure there are many different activities available here on campus. Try different things. This is your time in life where you have additional time and flexibility. So if you've always thought, you know what, I want to learn to play basketball. Because as I was saying earlier, that is the best sport in the world. It's basketball. Sorry to say, it's not cricket, it's not field hockey. Basketball is the best sport. I'm happy to discuss that with you all. But maybe you want to try basketball or learn a different craft. Maybe you've always wanted to learn how to make clothing. This is your chance to do it. Get involved in clubs, try different things. Again, you will develop new skills yourself. You will meet different people. You will learn different perspectives. All of those things will add to you the value of you as an individual. Okay? And again, if nothing else, when you apply for colleges in the US, you can list these activities that you're involved in different clubs. Maybe you learn a foreign language. You get involved in sports and volunteerism. That makes you a very attractive candidate in the future. And again, I think it makes you a better and more interesting person. And that's a skill and a talent that you take with you. Even if you don't get into the US university you want, you will be a better person for it, and I promise that. I'll stop there. I've been talking way too much already, but happy to take your questions. And again, I brought a few small gifts for the best questions. So start thinking now. I'm happy to answer anything or try to answer any questions you have. Studied in the US, living in the US. Me here in Hyderabad, I've been here for 2 years. I can talk about that, or any of the other countries I've worked in. So thank you all for being here. I hope that wasn't too boring. Most of you are still awake. So let's take some time for some questions and have a good discussion. Thank you. So is someone going to facilitate the microphone so we can get questions? I think we have a microphone here. If you have a question, raise your hand. Here's the first question.
Good evening, sir. So, as you said, basketball is the greatest sport in the world. I totally agree with you. It's my favorite sport as well. So, I'm going to ask you the best question ever. Who do you think is the GOAT, the greatest of all time?
Well, okay, so I am 50 years old. So I grew up watching basketball in the 80s and 90s. So there's no question in my mind who the GOAT is.
Michael Jordan?
Thank you. Let me just comment really quick about basketball. To me, I grew up playing basketball. I was never great, but I love the sport. And it's a great example of how, if you want to get to know people and learn their personalities, play sports with them. You can see how people deal with stress. Basketball is a team sport, right? But you play with people, if they don't play as a team, they won't be successful. And you'll see on the internet, there's all these great statistics about Michael Jordan because I really do think he is the best of all time. But you can see how he helped his team, how they won championships, and how people like Scottie Pippen and others benefited and contributed to making him the best. So as much as I think he is the best individual player, he also elevated the entire team that he played on. All right. Actually, let me give you the first award since that was the first question. So this is a special coin. Do you mind taking this up to him, or you can come on up? So this year we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the United States and India. So that's a big deal. So we had these special coins made. It has the U.S. government seal on one side, and on the back side the 75 number, and it's in U.S. flag colors and Indian flag colors. So there you go. All right, where's the next question? A couple ladies in the back there, maybe? We'll get to you. We'll get you. Don't worry.
Good afternoon, sir. So this is kind of a personal question. Should I stand? I'm an NRI student, and I'm doing my undergraduate here, and I want to do my master's abroad. Now, I just want to ask, because I've asked an educational consultant that I'm not going to be able to do my master's abroad, as in US or Canada, but I can do it on UK or Australia. Is it true?
So just to clarify, you're studying international relations?
I'm an NRI. I did my 10th and 11th and 12th abroad, and I'm doing my undergraduate here. But I want to do my PG and PhD abroad.
Yeah. So they told you you can't go back to, you can't study in the US?
No, that's what they told me, that I can't do it in US and Canada. But I can do it in UK or Australia. Is it true, or it's just...
Absolutely false. 100% false.
Okay.
Again, I don't know if there's any restrictions on when you were doing your overseas studies, but again, the US welcomes all students.
All right.
And again, if you participate in something like a Fulbright program, because that's sponsored and paid for by the US government, there are restrictions. In other words, if you go to the US for 2 years of study, they do expect you to come back to India, because this is part of an exchange program. They don't want you to go to the US and just stay there. They want you to bring that experience and knowledge back to India. So I would just put out there, certain programs within that are sponsored by the US government have restrictions that you must come back and spend at least several years back in India. But in general, there are no restrictions on who is allowed to apply to US universities. Again, there's 4,500 different universities, and we want to welcome international students. I forgot to mention, thank you for your question.
Thank you, sir.
Do you know how many Indian students are in the US right now studying? Any guess? Anybody have a guess? I'm not good with locks. Tell me in regular numbers. 100,000? Million? No, not that many. So in general, we have almost 1 million international students. The largest number of students are from China. about 360,000 international students from China are in the US. India is the second largest group, and they have about 170,000 students at present. Okay? So, I would personally love to see a lot more Indian students there, especially since India and the US are becoming closer and closer partners. We share democratic values. We have a lot in common with India. So why aren't there 300,000 Indian students? We need to get that number up. And I would love to see India be the #1 sending country. So that's the goal I'm working on. And that's why I said I was a little disappointed that we don't have more of you students in the US, but we'll get you there sooner or later. So 170,000 of your friends and colleagues are already in the US studying, and you can join them. Next question. There was a couple ladies in the back there.
Good afternoon,
Oh,
sir.
we're over here. Then we'll come to you guys in a minute.
Good afternoon, sir. As you said that there are 4,500 universities in the United States.
Yeah.
Is there anything like anti-ragging thing?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Anti-ragging.
Oh, we say hazing, I think?
Some
Yeah.
some sort of harassment.
At a university, no. In general, occasionally you'll see that with sports teams at universities. Some of the upperclassmen, the seniors and juniors within a sports team might do some hazing. And in the US system, we have what's called fraternities or sororities. These are kind of clubs within the university. And unfortunately, sometimes there is some mild hazing with that. But a lot of universities are trying to push back on that because it's not beneficial to creating good student bodies, and it often leads to problems. But it's very small. In general, universities are huge in the United States. 30,000 students is not unheard of. And so within that large organization, if you're walking down to a class, you don't know if someone's a senior or a freshman, okay? Because everyone's different and you're not sure who's who. So in general, it's not a problem, but there are certain cases where it does exist.
Good evening, sir. Can you name a few scholarships that Indian students can look forward to, and also what would be the requirements for them? Thank you.
Yeah, there's a huge range of different options of scholarships. There's only a few that the U.S. government itself sponsors. We do some programs that are for undergraduate students like yourselves, where we send students for up to 1 academic year or 1 academic semester. So you can kind of go see for yourself if you think it would be a good fit for your further studies. I mentioned briefly the Fulbright program. There's a number of different types of Fulbright scholarships. Some are for research. Some are to get actual master's degrees. But in general, I think for most of you, you would be able to qualify for academic scholarships through your university itself. And that's why it's tricky, because again, with that many thousands of different universities to choose from, I can't really say if there's one program or another. It depends on the university. And that's why it's important to start looking now and doing research and finding out if there's certain universities you want to apply for and which universities are offering the most scholarships for foreign students. Because sometimes there's certain scholarships that are only for US students, and there's other ones that are reserved for students like yourself that are international students. So there's a long list, and it really just depends on what you're studying and where you want to study. That's why I really recommend reaching out to the Education USA advisors, and they can help you do some of that important research. But I realize that cost is one of the bigger challenges that many of you would face going to the US. But for those that are in the business world, think about the return on investment. If you invest say the 30, 40, or whatever $1,000 it would take to go get your US degree, you can stay and work for 3 years, earn a good salary, and then you're opening the door for much better employment opportunities in the future. So you will get the return on your investment. It just may take some time. But again, please reach out and do the research and work with an advisor to get some specific ideas of scholarships that would fit for you.
This side.
Hello.
Hello, sir. This is Jessica Michael. Since you work in the administrative council, you work for the betterment of every individual you meet. So my question to you is, since you've gone to India and Mexico, you just have asked how many students have taken tech, and then you've seen quite a number of hands rising. But the same thing, you went to Mexico, you've seen very few hands rising up. So how do you take that as a disadvantage or an advantage?
In general, the U.S. approach to education, because I'm a father. I have 3 sons, as you heard. My oldest son just finished his undergraduate studies. He studied English. My middle son is going back to school in a few weeks. He's studying maybe business, maybe Chinese, I'm not sure yet. And my youngest is 17. He's actually starting the process now to apply for his undergraduate studies. And I think the American approach, I'm not saying it's the best approach, but the American approach is each person is different. Each of my kids is very different from the other. Each of them has different interests, different abilities. So as a parent, my approach is, if you like English, you should study English. If the middle one is good at languages, you should study languages. The third one, he wants to be a lawyer. He would be great to go to law school. He should prepare for that. So my approach, and in general, the American approach is, one size does not fit everybody. In other words, you should choose something that's a good fit for you, something you're passionate about. Ideally, that whatever you're passionate about can also provide a living for you, because again, you can't always live off your parents forever, right? Hopefully not. At least your parents would say they don't want you to live off them forever. So ultimately, you can't just be passionate. You have to find a way to be sustainable and make that career path out of that. So if you're an artist, for example, maybe you really love art, but that's going to be tougher to make a living as opposed to something in the tech field. So what I would say is, if there's a large percentage of people pursuing technical fields, that's okay as long as that's where your passion is. Because even if you're doing it just because your parents want you to, or because there's good job prospects, you may not be that good at it if you're not passionate about it. And you're always going to be more successful if you follow and you combine where your talents are and where your opportunities.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Shinandan, and my question is, suppose if I want to qualify for one of your scholarships, so do I have to be at the top of my class? Like I have to get the highest grade, be at the top 5? That's my question, sir.
So grades are important. Even though I talked about the value of doing different things, volunteerism, clubs, other activities, grades are still important. I'm not going to say you have to be in the top 5% or the top 10%. But again, a lot of US universities are looking for the total candidate. In other words, if you get really good grades, but you do nothing else, that's probably not a good balance. If you get decent grades and you have a lot of other experience, that's probably making you a stronger candidate than somebody who just focused on the academics. So again, I would say look for balance, but don't lose sight of the grades.
Yes, sir.
Just don't make it your only focus, okay?
Thank you, sir.
I think, so do you have time to take 2 more questions or 1, sir?
Yeah, we have at least 5 more minutes maybe.
Okay, so.
Hi, sir. Are you aware of IACC, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce?
Sounds familiar.
Sir, does it really play a role in selecting the universities or in the visa interview?
You asked about, do they have a role in visa interviews?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So if you join the IACC, does that make it easier to get
No,
a
sir.
visa?
It's like entrepreneurs are the members of IACC, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Like they have foreign connections, like
Yeah.
things get easier with foreign exchanges and something.
Okay. So in general, there's a lot of misperceptions about visas. I think people are afraid to apply. They think that there's going to be a mean American interviewing you and harassing you and trying to trip you up with tricky questions. The reality is, we want you to come to the US. Whether you're a student, you're an entrepreneur, a business leader, our job, we want you to come to the US. It's good for the US economy, it's good for our two countries to have closer relations. So in general, when you apply for a visa, they're going to ask questions about why you're going there. So if you're going as a business person, they say, why are you going to the US? You say, well, I have some partnerships there with US companies. I'm trying to go learn about their new product, get some training so that I can sell that product here in India. Okay, have a good trip. The tricky thing is every person has to prove that their story makes sense. And if you're a student, what's the question they're going to ask you? They're going to say, why did you choose this university? You have to explain in your own words why you chose that university, especially if it's a university that's lesser well known. Okay, again, there's so many different options. If you chose a small university in a state with not a lot of people in South Dakota, for example, the person's going to say, why did you choose that school? If you say, I don't know, that's a problem, okay? You're spending a lot of time and a lot of money to go study in America. You better have a good story about why you chose that school. And if you just chose it because your friend went there, that's probably not enough information. So you need to understand how you made that decision and just explain it to the person. Now, if we're talking about membership in an organization like IACC, that's not going to necessarily make it easier, but it shows maybe that as a business leader, you're working with organizations that have existing relationships. Maybe you're going to attend an IACC convention or meeting. Again, that could make sense. So I won't say it's a huge positive, but if it's part of what you're doing as part of your business, and you want to do business with the US, look for those types of organizations, and then they often organize what we call trade missions. So our US Department of Commerce is bringing an education trade mission to Hyderabad in September. What that means is they're bringing US universities here, and they're going to come talk to universities and try to attract students. And they do the same with India. We take Indian business leaders to the US, we try to help them foster connections so that they can do business in the US, because that's good business for India, it's good business for the US. So I do recommend looking for organizations that are a good fit for what you are trying to achieve in your personal life and in your professional life. Okay, we have one more question,
Yes,
or is
sir.
that it?
We are wrapping it up because they're getting late for their buses.
Okay, don't miss
Yeah.
your bus.
So you can always reach out to US Consulate and Education USA, as David said. So they'll give you all the necessary information. Once again, I thank you very much for coming. And I also thank our Professor Karunakar sir for coming and being with us. A big round of applause for them. I request Karunakar sir to felicitate David. Thank you, sir.
The shawl, and this is the way we give respect to a guest.
Thank you all. I hope we had a good conversation, and I hope to see you all in the US in a few years. Good luck on your studies.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
Any,
much.